"Get behind me, Satan, for you have in mind not the things of God, but the things of man."
Yeah, and if you are wondering how we arrived at such a devastating confrontation, well, the text may suggest that a bizarre two-stage healing of a blind man earlier in the chapter is actually the deliberate setup for understanding why Jesus just publicly called his closest ally the devil.
Welcome to this deep dive into Mark chapter 8. We have a really fascinating stack of sources in front of us today for you, and our mission is to explore the intense political tension, honestly, the incredibly granular geography of Roman and pagan power, and a catastrophic misunderstanding of what it actually meant to be the Christ.
Right, we are going to trace how a seemingly random boat ride and a mysterious healing build toward one of the most shocking public demolitions in the ancient texts.
Yeah, so let's start by setting the opening scene. We begin in the rural countryside, where Jesus feeds a massive crowd. Roughly 4,000 people are fed from just 7 loaves of bread and a few small fish.
And they collect exactly 7 baskets of leftovers.
Right. And after this, Jesus and his disciples get into a boat and sail to a place called Dalmanutha. Now, I want to pause the narrative right here because the geography of this text is wild.
It really is.
Dalmanutha is extremely obscure. I mean, it appears absolutely nowhere else outside this specific passage, and it has never been identified archaeologically with any certainty.
Exactly. The location is a true historical ghost town, which, tells us something vital about the source material. The author is giving us a highly localized pin drop.
It feels like, well, it's like someone handing you a granular map of a neighborhood where the streets changed names centuries ago.
Yeah.
The obscurity highlights the specific grounded nature of Mark's geography.
Right. He is not setting this in a vague, mythical, once upon a time in the desert kind of way. He is tracking a very real journey.
And that matters, right? Because
Okay.
that grounded reality sets the stage for the conflict that meets them there.
It does. As soon as they arrive in Dalmanutha, the Pharisees are waiting to confront Jesus. They demand a sign from heaven.
Okay, let me stop you there. Looking at the historical context, we have to recognize that this is not theological curiosity. They are not genuinely asking for a spiritual demonstration to satisfy their faith.
No, absolutely not.
But let me push back on that for a second. If Jesus just fed 4,000 people in the countryside from a few loaves of bread, why not just give the Pharisees the sign they want?
Yeah, that's the obvious question, right?
I mean, he clearly has the power to do it. Why not put on a cosmic show, shut them up right there, and just win them over?
Because doing so would walk right into a political loyalty test. The Pharisees are attempting to force a highly calculated forced error.
A forced error.
Exactly. Think about the scene we just left. A figure drawing crowds of 4,000 people in the countryside, speaking and acting in ways that echo royal and prophetic language.
Right, which would terrify the establishment.
Exactly. That kind of movement triggers every alarm bell for the authorities. By demanding a sign from heaven, they're trying to corner him into making a blatant, undeniable messianic claim.
So they could report him.
Right. A claim they could then report upward to the ruling powers.
Oh, I see. So if he calls down fire from the sky or whatever, they can immediately run to the Romans and say, look, this guy is claiming to be the new king. He is starting a rebellion.
Precisely.
But wait, what happens if he tries to give a sign and fails?
Then they achieve their secondary goal. It becomes a public failure that instantly deflates his massive following. It is a completely engineered trap.
Wow. Win-win for them.
Yeah, he either declares himself a king and gets arrested for sedition, or he fails and loses the crowd of 4,000.
The text notes his reaction to this trap, and it is incredibly visceral. Jesus lets out a sharp sigh.
A very human reaction.
Yeah, he completely refuses to perform on command. And, in that heavily monitored environment, refusing to play their game is itself a deeply political act.
Very much so.
He doesn't debate them. He doesn't negotiate. He just turns around, leaves them standing there, and immediately reboards the boat.
And that physical departure, that sudden retreat back onto the water, it directly causes the tense conversation that happens next while they are in transit.
Right, the adrenaline of that confrontation is likely still running high.
Oh, definitely. And while they are out on the water, Jesus issues a very cryptic warning. He says, "Take heed. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod," in Mark 8:15.
And the disciples catastrophically miss the point.
Completely.
They're sitting there in the boat, and they realize they forgot to pack bread. So when Jesus mentions yeast, they immediately think he is complaining about their lack of catering.
They think he is mad about the groceries.
Right, and this leads to a severe dressing down from Jesus for missing the point entirely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why use yeast to describe a religious elite and a client king?
It's a great question.
So yeast here isn't about baking. Is it more like, I don't know, a computer virus?
Mm.
A tiny line of code that quietly infects and corrupts the entire operating system of society.
That is an excellent way to frame it. It is the most politically charged metaphor in the entire chapter, and we have to look at the pairing. Why put the Pharisees and Herod in the same warning?
Because on the surface, they seem to operate in completely different spheres.
Right, the Pharisees derived their authority from their interpretation of the Torah.
Wait, for those listening who might not be ancient history buffs, how did the Torah function here? Was it just like a religious book they read on the weekends?
Not at all. The Torah was the foundational law and the social fabric of the era. By controlling the interpretation of the Torah, the Pharisees commanded enormous social legitimacy among the ordinary people.
I see.
They were the grassroots influencers who could dictate what was pure, what was lawful, and who was acceptable in society.
So they hold the ideological power. But then you have Herod Antipas, who was the tetrarch. What exactly is a tetrarch or a client king?
Well,
Does that mean he's taking orders directly from Rome, but pretending to be an independent local ruler?
yes, exactly. A client king is essentially a local puppet ruler propped up by the threat of Roman military might. Herod Antipas held Roman-backed military and taxation power over the region of Galilee.
Okay, wow.
And keep in mind, he is the same ruler who had already executed John the Baptist. So when you put the Pharisees and Herod together, what do you get?
You get the complete apparatus of control.
Bingo.
You have the religious elite who possess the social capital to declare someone a blasphemer or a false prophet, and you have the client king who has the hard power to arrest, tax, or behead someone without any need for Roman review.
Exactly. They cover both the ideological and the physical domains. Jesus is saying their influence, their yeast, it works its way through everything. It corrupts the whole batch of dough.
And a figure drawing 4,000 people in the countryside is absolutely on both of their threat registers.
Without a doubt. The Pharisees feel their social legitimacy threatened, and Herod feels his military and political stability threatened.
Which makes his warning to the disciples so urgent. He is trying to wake them up to how these insidious systems of power operate.
And the disciples are just staring at their empty lunchboxes.
It would be funny if the stakes weren't life and death. They are completely blind to the reality of what is happening around them.
And you know, their blindness is the central theme of this entire journey.
It really is. But before we look at the climax of this journey, we have to ask, what happens when a Jewish teacher brings his followers to the ultimate monument of imperial and pagan power to ask them who he really is?
To answer that, we have to follow them north. The group is traveling to Caesarea Philippi. And the geography here is critical because Caesarea Philippi is unmistakable.
It's massive, right?
It is a distinctly Roman-style city built by Philip, who was the son of Herod the Great. It is situated at the base of Mount Hermon in the far north of Galilee.
Just imagine what that would look like to a group of rural fishermen. This isn't just another small village.
Far from it. It sits near a massive spring that feeds the Jordan River. Because of that incredible natural feature, the site had long been a major cultic center for the god Pan.
Pan, the Greek god.
Right. Its older name was Panias, which is actually preserved today as Banias. So you are looking at a landscape dominated by a massive spring, pagan temples dedicated to Pan, and Roman civic architecture.
Built by a Herodian king, specifically to honor the Roman emperor.
Exactly.
When you lay it out like that, it becomes obvious that they're not stepping into some neutral, quiet, religious vacuum. The landscape itself is explicitly designed to broadcast imperial and pagan power.
It's intimidating.
Truly. If you are listening to this today, just imagine being asked to publicly denounce a superpower while standing right in the shadow of their greatest military monument.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
It is an overwhelming visual and cultural assertion of who rules the world, setting up maximum political friction for the conversation that is about to happen.
But crucially, just before they arrive at this massive monument of imperial power, something highly unusual happens at a place called Bethsaida, which we find in Mark 8:24.
This is the moment we teased at the very beginning. Jesus heals a blind man, but it is the only gradual miracle in the Gospels that happens in two stages.
Right.
First, the man regains partial sight. He famously says, "I see men, for I see them like trees walking." And only after a second touch does he see clearly.
We have to ask why a healing would happen in stages. Was there a lack of power, a flaw in the method?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Why didn't it just work the first time?
Well, we have to look at the scriptural context. Any literate Jew in that crowd would have instantly recognized what the blind receiving sight meant.
Right.
It echoes Isaiah 35, where the opening of blind eyes is the ultimate signal of the coming of divine rescue. It is a billboard saying the time of restoration has arrived.
Okay, so it's a huge deal.
Yes. But what is fascinating here is that some scholars believe this two-stage miracle is a deliberate structural setup by the author for the events that immediately follow in Caesarea Philippi.
Oh, I see where this is going. The partial sight is a living metaphor for the disciples themselves.
Exactly.
Think about it. Sight that comes in partial stages is not really sight yet. If you are seeing men like walking trees, you are perceiving something, but you are still fundamentally distorting reality. You don't have the true picture.
The disciples are about to demonstrate that they only have partial sight. They can see who Jesus is in outline, but their vision is dangerously distorted by their own cultural expectations.
Which brings us right into the shadow of Caesarea Philippi. They are standing among the Roman architecture near the shrines to Pan at the base of Mount Hermon.
Right.
Jesus turns to his disciples and asks them a direct question. Who do people say that I am? And then Peter delivers the confession that every reader of the text has been waiting for.
The big moment.
In Mark 8:29, Peter answers, "You are the Christ."
It is a massive declaration. To declare a Jewish teacher to be the Christ, while standing in a city built by Rome's loyal client king, that makes that title land with incredible political weight.
But the drama immediately escalates. As soon as Peter gets the title out, Jesus begins to teach them what that title actually means. He predicts his own suffering. He says he will be rejected and killed.
And this is where the partial sight becomes glaringly evident. We have to define what Christ meant to a first-century audience. The term Messiah, or Christ, meant a Davidic king.
Could you break down what a Davidic king represents in this context?
A Davidic king represents the line of King David, a conquering hero who would drive out the Roman occupiers with military force, reestablish the throne, and restore national glory to Israel.
So it's very militaristic.
Yes, it is an expectation of absolute, undeniable power.
So to Peter, the idea of the Christ suffering and being killed is a complete oxymoron. It contradicts everything the title was supposed to mean. A military victor doesn't get rejected and executed by the state. So what does Peter do? The text says he actually pulls Jesus aside to object.
Which is wild.
Right. He takes the man he just called the Christ, pulls him aside, and essentially tells him he has the whole plan wrong.
Peter is operating completely under that partial vision. He got the title right, but he got the job description catastrophically wrong.
And Jesus' reaction is explosive. He doesn't just quietly correct Peter. The text says he wheels around, looks at the other disciples, and calls Peter Satan right to his face. "Get behind me, Satan, for you have in mind not the things of God, but the things of men."
It is a stunning reversal. The man who is just recognized as the Christ turns on his closest ally within seconds.
Yeah.
And by doing this publicly, looking directly at the other disciples, it is not a private reprimand. It is a public demolition of everything Peter thought he had just understood.
It proves that the confession itself was dangerously misunderstood. Peter's vision was exactly like the blind man in the first stage of healing.
Right, men like trees walking.
Yes, he saw the Christ, but he saw him like a walking tree, a distorted projection of his own desires for a conquering king.
And Jesus identifies the core issue. The things of men. The expectation of power, of dominance, of driving out the Romans with force.
It makes total sense.
Peter wanted a Christ who would fit perfectly into the logic of Caesarea Philippi meeting power. But Jesus is introducing a completely different, inverted kingdom where the ultimate victory comes through suffering and rejection.
It is such a brilliant dramatic arc. From the political traps of the Pharisees to the computer virus-like yeast of control to a blind man seeing walking trees, all culminating in a shattered expectation at the foot of Mount Hermon.
It really is. And it leaves us with a profound question to mull over.
Mm.
How often do we, like Peter standing in the shadow of Caesarea Philippi, project our own cultural expectations of power, victory, and success onto our leaders, ultimately blinding us to what they are actually saying?
That is a question that definitely sticks with you. And, we really want to know what you think about all of this. Please, drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's historical drama. When you look at the massive political tension of the era and the crushing weight of the Roman occupation, do you actually sympathize with Peter's reaction? It's hard not to on some level, right? Let us know down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the sources, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future explorations. And don't forget to check the description below for the exclusive links mentioned in the show today.
Yes, definitely check those out.
In the next chapter, we will see what actually happens as Jesus and these disciples leave the shadow of Caesarea Philippi, continuing their journey while grappling with the stark, freshly revealed reality of his predicted suffering. Will their partial sight finally become clear? Join us next time to find out.